Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
We are waiting for, see if anyone will attend. And in the meantime, Paul is going to show his Padlet.
Oh, good. I saved it correctly, so it is here. Okay. All right. So this is what I came up with. Can you see that?
Yes.
So I tried to make an assignment out of it, like kind of an introductory, little bit like familiarize students' way to familiarize themselves with some noteworthy museum collections of Southeast Asian art.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I used is it called the library view or whatever with the columns?
And shelf view.
Yeah, thanks. Shelf view. And I just gave a heading for the museums that I've selected. Obviously, there are many others, but it's a way to get things started. And these just link basically to the search function, hopefully. Yep. Of the respective museum sites. And the idea that I've asked them to work with is to just play around with the search function and to find an object of Southeast Asian art that they like, that's attractive, or that interests them. And then I've asked them that they could post the link to the artwork into the respective column from the museum where they found it, maybe with a little blurb about why they chose that thing. So I did one from Cleveland myself. So Cleveland, I really like their website. It's very elegant, so you can search it very easily. So I mean, you in the class maybe we're doing Cambodia or Thailand, so you can search. I got 60 hits off Cambodia, right? And then lots of beautiful sculptures and metalwork, and you can download objects, you can work with them. And Cleveland's great because they have it's all commons. Like you can even publish in books these images without requesting permission. So that's another reason why I chose it. But anyway, but you can do the link share here. You can grab the link, and that's all I did. And then I would show them this and then ask them to, add it to their Padlet. So I just chose one as an example that I like, which is this Buddha, which if you click on it should take you to their object record. I just copied the link. And I just said, I like the sculpture of this place called Sitet in Thailand. To serve as a kind of an example, a model.
Perfect. Yeah, this is great. And as you were talking and showing us, I was thinking, I don't know if you've thought about what you're going to do for your screencast tutorial, but this could make a perfect screencast tutorial for your students. So you could, when you introduce this assignment to them, you could explain it and show it just as you just did now. And that could be like an ideal use of a screencast tutorial, because you could have the instructions written, and I see you have the instructions written up there of what to do, but even just like a 2-minute and it just demonstrating what you just did, it goes such a long way, right? Picture and multimedia are worth 1,000 words, also, obviously. But so anyway,
yeah, that's a great idea. I'll definitely do that. I'll definitely do that, because and I'm kind of trying to get out of this mind frame that I would, because I won't be, but I'm used to, I would Zoom demonstrate it the way that I have been, but obviously in an asynchronous class that cannot happen. So I need to embrace more like video explanations, like the kind that Nicole showed us on Friday. And so I will do that. That's great advice. Thank you, Laura. That will be what I will do, because I need to be able to demonstrate to them, the search functions.
Yeah. There's just a lot of little nuances, and even if an assignment was just a document, with literal instructions, sometimes as you're explaining it, sometimes you'll hit on a little nuance that maybe wasn't super explicit in the directions, but it's something you thought of as you're explaining it, and it can also help students as well, just even if it's just a plain document that you can talk about. Now, this is great. Vanessa and Nicole, do you have any comments or thoughts?
I love it, and I was thinking, because I'm also playing in my hive mind and also trying to experience these strategies, I was thinking that these museums can be also like group work. and a group of students can be assigned one museum and other group another museum, and you make this collaborative work.
That's a really good idea. I have an assignment that I have used in a different class that I was thinking to adapt to this one. Because sorry, Vanessa, Nicole, I don't know if you if I've explained, but I'm at the beginning of creating an online class for the Center for Southeast Asian Studies. So I'm looking at this like in terms of your lessons, like to implement them in an immediate way like this, but I'm kind of looking at how I can do a whole semester, because that's what I have to do by next summer. And so, yeah, I think that's a great idea, Vanessa, because I was thinking to bring in an assignment that I use in another class to adapt it, in which I have students select not just sort of what they like from the museum, but to actually use more targeted searches to find particular kinds of objects, of artworks, to then compare and contrast with one another in terms of their appearance, their style, and their symbolism, their iconography. So yeah, I could see that like as like 2 weeks down the road, maybe another Padlet like this one, where we build on the same template and even the same collections basically, but now I'm asking them to do actual research.
Yeah,
as opposed to like what I like kind of thing.
Yeah, great ideas. That reminds me too of this shelf layout with the columns and categories and things. So Monisha Dasgupta, who came and showed her Padlet, she had used that for group work. So she had like team A's, on one of these columns, and so it is a nice layout for when you do a team project, because they can all focus on that one column.
Nicole, yeah, I shamelessly stole from her,
no,
and
that's
from
good.
from Kirsten. I tried all. I mean, when I said I was playing around with Padlet for 2 hours, I was really playing around with the layouts, and I wanted to do something creative with the timeline one, but it's not really a timeline. Like I want a real time. Like I was thinking it'd be cool, like if I could help them to learn relative sequences of history, but it doesn't work like that. It's just a layout as a timeline. It's not. I want a real like timeline they could play. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I tried to make it that, and I was like, I cannot.
Yeah, I know that's a good assessment of that. Yep.
Sorry, Nicole. I think I cut you off.
No worries. I like the way that you formatted it, and that's a good format that you chose for gathering resources for many different things. I wanted to make a comment real quick about the shelf format. I noticed our guest speakers have used it frequently, and you've used it here. You folks are using it in a very good way. I wanted to bring up that there was one course I had where it was like per week. So this professor would make a column for each week, and we had to do the discussions on there, and it became really laggy. So I brought that up in the past workshop, and I wanted to bring it up now, that if you use Padlet and use the shelf format, it's good to use it for something like this rather than for a weekly discussion for the entire course. If you have like 16 columns, it gets really held up.
You'd be scrolling way over.
I purposefully I wanted to add 2 more museums, but I purposefully didn't, just to keep it clean.
It's a good idea.
But I like that professor's idea, but I think maybe would this work, Nicole? Maybe you, if you wanted to do that, you would have a different Padlet for each week.
Yeah, that's what I've suggested in the past. I feel like that would work, because and then I think one of our speakers actually mentioned, though, it's not a good idea, which was interesting to me, because I don't think I've ever had a professor, which is true, use a Padlet every week, but I feel like it could be used that way. But I remember one of our speakers mentioning that it's better if you use it kind of less frequently. It's more impactful that way.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I was thinking of an example of the weekly Padlet assignment that one professor had, that was it was more of like the reflection of the week or something, like what was your aha moment, or what was your biggest takeaway. And so she had that on a Padlet every week, but she had basically like a Padlet of Padlets. So she had the Padlet of Padlets, and it would say, and this was a summer course, so there was only 6, but it would say week 1's reflections, week 2, so they would go to the Padlet of Padlets, and they could pick which week, it would have the dates on it, and then they could jump to that. So that's one advantage of the paid Padlet account, because you get unlimited Padlets, but yeah, you don't want it to get out of control and and too wild. So
Yeah.
either yeah, some kind of very consistent weekly thing that you can collect on a Padlet of Padlets, or something more constrained like this with a specific purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry if you probably addressed this. I haven't got to the Padlet of Padlets bit yet, but when we're talking about like the example that you mentioned where it was 6 weeks, was the Padlet of Padlets, the idea was that all 6 were like embedded on our Laulima
Yes.
page, and they
Yeah,
could just
yes.
choose. Okay.
Yes. Yes. It
Like
was
they're
like,
all kind of thumbnailed on the Laulima
yes,
page. Like,
exactly.
oh, I
Exactly.
see.
Yeah. So I'm going to put the link to our current Padlet of Padlets in the chat. So if anybody wants to take a quick look at it,
Cool,
or
thank
if
you.
Nicole wants to bring it up, we have 2 out there now, and so you can kind of see what it looks like when there's two Padlets out there.
I see. Okay, yeah. So I need to share my Padlet over here. And then like, but when it comes to when it comes to actually integrating this into Laulima, would you integrate the Padlet of Padlet window like this, or would it be better to have a separate window for each of your Padlets?
That's a good question. Yes, yes, you're making sense. You know, you have to just, you could go either way depending on how, you know, large it is. Like, so if it's going to have just 6 weeks or 6 Padlets, you know, you can embed it there and they can see it. But if you are having like a big discussion and everybody's posting and it's a little more chaotic, probably best to maybe not embed it so it starts getting like giant. I mean, you can scroll, but if it starts getting too crazy, so you have to think about like how many students are in the class, how many times will they be posting. Just, you know, if it's going to get kind of large, let's say, then it's maybe best to just link out to it and not show it in the embedded Laulima screen, because it's nice. It's a blast of color. You can see things being added, but if it starts to get a little unwieldy, then it's loses its, you know, appeal.
Yeah,
somewhat.
that's what happened to me with Laulima's forum this semester already, because I have an oral focus class and I have the students, they're giving in-person presentations, but the requirement of the class is that their peers need to evaluate them and they need to self-evaluate. So I created a forum for this to take place, but I made but it ended up with like 60 entries, and I'm like, wait, this is not this. And then, but I had, I don't know if it defaulted or I had chosen all of them to be moderated. And when I clicked on the forum button, it would just turn. It would take 5 minutes, and I was like, so I was back and forth with Laulima support. They were great, but they realized that it was that I had to turn off the moderation. Then it clicked on. It worked perfectly, but it was just that I had chosen moderate.
Oh yeah,
and
I
it basically
totally
glitched it out. But anyway, a similar lesson, but with a different tool.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Thanks for sharing that.
Is there a way to, like, if I used a Padlet, say like maybe that one I just showed you, maybe I use that like towards the end of week 1 or something, like after we've done some introductions, and maybe I make my video that you recommended that they view and all that, then I have that exercise, but I want to build on it, right? So I don't necessarily want to keep that Padlet live for more contributions, like come week 6, where they ought to be moving on to other things, like, and I don't, in order to keep people from like in the last week of class backtracking and doing stuff they really should have done earlier. Is there a way to keep it available so people can look at it, but not have more contributions, like to kind of have a close date?
I think you can turn off, like, but you would have to go in. I don't think you can set a date ahead of time in Padlet, but you can go in there and like turn off, you know, set the visitor permissions. Okay. You know, in the beginning, you had to explicitly change that to visitors can write, but you go back and say visitors can only read. And if you've told them a certain date that they can't add to it anymore, and then you just go do it yourself and switch that permission out.
Okay, so I can kind of lock it.
Yes.
Or whatever.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Great.
I was thinking also about the general design of that lesson or that week, because the Padlet can offer one kind of activity, one kind of interaction activity, but in the design, I guess there should be other kinds of activities to make that learning process complete. And maybe in the due dates, we can have the Padlet discussion, but then another one for closure. And in that way, because I was thinking that if I have to go back to the Padlet and make that closure, maybe if my due dates are very clear and I have another activity after the Padlet, that could take the students to this other activity because they have to do that. They have a due date and that activity is graded, for instance. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes really good sense. I'm maybe struggling a little with that one I just designed because I kind of just left it open, like as a greeting almost. But yeah, I hear you. I mean, you always need to follow up all the activities with something that makes them both pedagogically like rational, but also that it's clear why the students did it. So like for me, like we were talking about last week, like, so I did a whole semester of like video lectures for my introductory survey class, like 200 students that I ran like the last 2 years. And immediately it was evident that every video needed to be followed by a quiz. And so that's what
part of good course design is aligning like the objectives with whatever you offer them as resources, but also whatever you end up assessing them on. So there's kind of like this line that should be connectable. Sometimes we, as experts in our field, or like I want to like share all these things about instructional design, but it's too much for the goal at hand. So you have to kind of rein ourselves in, like, okay, yeah, we know all this, we'd like them to know everything, but what is the key thing they need to know, and let's keep it focused on that. And then you can always have a little section like if you want to dive deeper, but yeah, that tie-in. And so things like oftentimes like Padlet, and even Flipgrid is the beauty of it is to get to cause some engagement in a sort of low stakes way. That's not like a test. That's a little more fun, but it gets them either motivated, inspired, starts connecting the dots in some of the other materials that you have, perhaps. But it should lead toward some means to an end, other than just not neat. This is neat and I like it. Here I'm sharing it with you. So yeah, it's part of a bigger picture of the lesson. So we're in this particular boot camp and the lesson that you design, don't have to worry about those perfect alignments and things like that. We have other trainings that are more like course design and the starting from that whole alignment perspective, and really having kind of it's actually pretty fun to design in that way. It's often called backwards design. So if you really focus hard on what do you want them to come away with at the end of this, well, on a weekly basis, the end of this week. I mean, you will do it for the whole course as well, but on a weekly basis, you really target that, and then you work backwards, like what do I want to tell them? What do I want to give them to read? What do I want them to watch? What do I want them to do? And some of the doing is some small things, and you could be like a knowledge check that's low stakes. And sometimes you can lump some of these things into a participation, 10, 15, 20% of the grade, and you could just do some holistic, like, well, you can see how many times they posted or things like that. So it's not like it's a huge grade, but you can still do that. You can have a big presentation that's worth 20% of their 25% of their grade, and they post it on Padlet. It's a way to, again, what used to be just like a solitary experience of I'm creating my presentation, I'm handing it to the professor, he tells me back, but no one else sees it. It's a different level when you start letting everybody look at each other's. I mean, it used to be like, oh, people will plagiarize, copy, but really it's like what you said, I took it from Anisha. Well, that's what we want to happen, and that's that's the spirit of just sharing our work, and take it and make it your own kind of thing. So that's the way the workplace is now, and so students really need to get more used to, and they are already from social media sharing things, right? They will share their own photos, they share this, they share that, they overshare sometimes, but it's like they're more used to sharing, for first of all. So, and instead of worrying too much about, oh, they'll just copy, but maybe they're just getting inspired, maybe they couldn't see that light until they saw these other examples. So yeah, there's a lot of neat things to think about. So I guess no one else is coming. So we can proceed on our agenda if you don't mind staying alone here with us.
I don't mind, but I don't want to impose on you either.
No, it's fine. We're we are recording this for if anyone wants to who couldn't attend, but so we were going to have a quick little activity to write a bad discussion prompt and write a good one. But Nicole, let's see, what do you have on you want to move to the next slide? Okay, so yeah, we have no guest speaker, but we actually had a serendipitous guest speaker. Paul, thank you so much for showing and sharing your work and this great discussion that we had. So yay. We'll credit you as our guest speaker for this week. So we were leading up to the 2 tasks for Unit 3, which is creating a asynchronous forum discussion activity assignment, and also creating one for if you were going to be doing a live session, what kind of activity might create. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll just all kind of collaborate together. We were going to have a breakout room and so on, but we don't want to send you into a room alone. But so thank you. I mean, Unit 2, the Padlet. So it's not too late for people to keep working at their own pace to get through it. And so we'll just move along here. So Paul, thank you for being our audience, and you can tell us which one of these cards resonates with you.
Let's see. I think 2 resonate kind of. I have tried to have an asynchronous discussion, but I don't know if it fell flat, but I don't know if I really loved the outcome. And I want to know how to improve the quality of my online asynchronous discussions there at the bottom right. Yeah, I don't love synchronous discussions on Zoom because I think it's artificial a little bit. I mean, it's better than nothing. My preference is face-to-face teaching, of course. So I'm trying to embrace a little bit more wholeheartedly online teaching, which I have been doing, but by force and fiat, not by choice per se. So I'd like to learn how to make asynchronous discussions a little better, because my experience is basically I use the forums and I try to engage and stuff, but I just feel like people don't check back enough, and it's hard. I don't know. It's hard to incentivize for me.
Vanessa, do you have a comment?
Yes, I wanted to add my experience, because I'm doing my PhD right now, and I have a lot of asynchronous discussions, and they are just amazing. I'm having a great time. I'm learning so much from so many people. And I actually received the other day an email from one of the students from one of my classes, and telling me that she wanted to meet with me and have some coffee, because we bonded in such a way through these kind of discussions. But I wonder if it depends on if you are an undergraduate student, a graduate student, how the age of your students, if they are just starting their careers or at the end of their careers, so many things that affects the way of how much involvement you get.
True.
In my experience, sorry, Laura. Graduate students respond a lot better to some of this. Sorry.
No, I was going to say the same thing. And also, one thing, like Vanessa, you're in the College of Education, and so I really think they have an advantage, I guess, because the students in the College of Education are into learning, maybe a little bit more, a little bit more, the like how to learn and learning, love of learning, maybe potentially, but yes, it depends on a lot of factors. And so if you have a freshman level class, I would say, that's where the importance of a lot of icebreaker type things, very low stakes things, very low stakes discussions, try to earn the trust of each other. Nicole, as a student, do you have any, do you remember the first ever like synchronous discussion or that you had to participate with? Was it scary? What, just think back on, like what might have helped her.
Thinking to the first semester we went online, we didn't have any discussions. When I went into fall of 2020, I had an English class, and that was a really interesting class to me, but there was only me and maybe 2 other people out of 15 that were interested in the literature that we were reading. So it was kind of difficult to have discussions with them. That was a synchronous class. I also had a synchronous psychology of personality class in spring of 2021. And that class, I had a lot of really good discussions with them. And I don't remember the class standings, but I'm pretty sure that the students who I spoke with that were closer to graduation, they were more engaged and just more thinking more deeply, whereas the other students who were probably just starting out, they were a little more uncomfortable and scared. So that was a shift for like the English class. It was maybe the topic as well as the type of students that were in that class. They didn't enjoy it very much, but in my other class, the psychology class, nearly everyone was engaged and really enjoyed. We had breakout group discussions every class.
I was just going to mention the breakout room feature seems to free up and make discussions better. So Paul, I don't know if you have used that in your synchronous discussions, but whenever it's the large group, it's just like a human nature thing to, no one wants to be, there's always a couple of people that will, but to try to get everyone to participate, it's very difficult. So the breakout rooms where there's no professor there are that allow for that sort of feeling safe and not intimidated kind of space, is a technique that can start earning trust between the students and feeling like, and also it's for like new to online, which now that after the pandemic, everybody's experienced online, but just new college students in general are a little bit, they don't know how to have a discussion maybe, or, there's some kind of strategies that you can make the early discussions very guided, like here's what I want you to do, here's the person that's going to take the notes, very structured, so that everybody doesn't feel just like lost or like I'm just like sitting here, I don't know what to say. Somebody has, there's some, like, if you can get very specific with what you want them to do, the less experienced students will do better than just kind of thrown in there and they haven't maybe done it very much or aren't sure of themselves. But again, back to the icebreaker and having something that maybe they aren't intimidated by the subject matter, or maybe they're embarrassed they didn't read the chapter they were supposed to have read, so any little icebreaker. And you can also build mini icebreakers into, so like, let's say you want them to discuss something from chapter 6, which they should have read, but first, spend 5 minutes, and then it's like some kind of fun little thing, which I know my mind's going blank at the moment, but it could be, what was the last restaurant you ate at, or whatever, just, it could be just a sample, go around, something that you feel is fairly safe, maybe not the restaurant idea, but what's the last good meal that you had, or something that everybody could possibly have an answer to, that's not stigmatizing or other, that's something that everybody can feel safe answering, and or find out if anybody in common, is there anything in common, like let's find one thing in common, and then they just have to like just kind of brainstorm until they find something that is in common. Just little things like that, even 5 minutes before they do the real discussion. It's just kind of eases things and builds a little bit of relaxation and trust. So, okay. could move on.
I was just going to add, so like I have a little experience with them, but I guess I'm a little shy of the breakout room like mode. I played with it, but where it has been successful for me, cheating a little, is that I have my TAs do that, and they're very good at it. Maybe it's an age thing, maybe it's an approachability thing. But so I taught that huge introductory survey for a few years online, and so that the TAs would have they have their breakout sections, the way it's structured, and theirs were live Zooms. Whereas I was posting like videos and whatnot of myself, and they are of myself talking. But they got pretty good at developing the breakout room thing, and I could see how it can work nicely if you have like 20 students. You can break them out into groups of like 3 or 4. But I don't know how to. It's not really, you can't do that when you have like 150 people. I mean, in the big group, like there's nothing. I don't think you can do it.
I don't know what the breakout room limit is. I think it's pretty high though.
But I mean, what I don't know. I don't know how I can't conceive it is all. I mean, even if you could do it technically.
Yeah. So anyway. it's kind of like, yeah, even though the class is huge, they still can get a small, intimate kind of discussion. And I've seen it too, where sometimes it works to have the same groups every week, that you've made this, let's say the 4 people, and it can actually keep people from dropping a class if they stay with those same 4 people. Then they kind of become friends, or like Vanessa experienced, somebody wants to even meet in real life or whatever, and then you start wanting to show up because you like them, or you will feel bad if you didn't come and they're stuck by themselves or whatever. So there's a lot of benefits to it. But the idea of, it's like in a face-to-face, like if you have them cluster and around in their desks or whatever, you can't hear everything that's you might wander around the room, but they're a little bit more free to speak and not feel intimidated. I mean, professors intimidate, that's the truth, and so even in a discussion forum online, and we'll talk about this, like even though that they're discussing something and the professor might feel like, oh, I need to respond here, but the ones that don't respond a lot, you get more thoughtful responses that are more vulnerable, let's say, and more meaningful. It's nothing personal to any professors. It's just, that's the way it's been. Everybody, you respect your professor, they're an expert, and I'm just dumb. I don't know what's I don't know what this stuff is. I'm trying to learn, and I might be saying something wrong. I might fail. You don't want to fail in front of your professor's eyes and so on. But you can also, if you set up like 50 breakout rooms, let's pretend, and I don't know what the limit is, but to them, it's just like us 4 right now talking. That's what it's like. And then you could have several activities, but you can also, as the host, you can, and your TAs can do it too, is like you can move from breakout room to breakout room. You can like pop in. Okay, how's it going? Anybody? Just,
I like that a lot. That works well.
Yeah, like, you can just travel through the 50 in the hour that they're in. It just depends, but you need
20 maybe.
It needs to be some evidence. So some techniques that we'll actually be using today, which is during a breakout room. I mean, we're gonna have to pretend we're in a breakout room, but you can be filling out. They can be filling out a Google document that might have some prompts in that you want them to discuss and come up with a joint answer or something, or whatever. Sky's the limit for what you want them to do during this time. But it's provides structure to that. You don't ideally, unless it is graduate students, I would say just have a free-for-all discussion open with no goals. So if you have a particular thing that you're trying to have them do or reach, you can just sit in the main room, and they're all in the breakout rooms. You can see the typing going on. You can see what's happening. You can see, oh, this group is really going to, they are really adding stuff in, and and then you see this other group is like nothing has been added to the document. So you're like, I better go jump into breakout room 3 because I don't see anything happening. Just say, how's it going? Are you having a hard time getting started? Anything I can help you with? but it's pretty cool. I mean, it really is a powerful thing. And I've heard students that I work with all the time say that their best experiences were in the breakout rooms. And a lot of learning happens there. So, all right, Nicole, do you want to?
I wanted to share that I have used the breakout rooms in the dentistry program where I taught in Peru.
Oh, okay.
And I use groups sometimes of 8 students, that it's a lot. But previously I shared guidelines and documents that they have to read. And during the breakout room, they have to prepare presentations. So it was a lot of work, and they had nearly an hour to review documents and extra information and to prepare a whole presentation that then when we went to the main room, they actually had to present to the rest of the class. So that was the purpose. The goal was very specific.
Mhm.
They had to prepare a presentation, and they will have to share that presentation with the whole class. So it was a serious thing. And they actually cherished that moment when we went to the breakout room to ask, do you need help? Do you have questions? And they had a lot because this was graded. So it was very important for them to accomplish that.
That's a great idea. I like that a lot. Was your class like seminar form? Was it like a 3-hour time frame for the class?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I taught classes until now that are 3 or 4 hour classes with
Yeah.
a lot of activities. So
Yeah.
I first gave them time to read some information, then to gather together in groups. I like the idea of experts, so I could give each group a subject for them to explore, because at the end in those presentations I don't want every group explaining the same thing.
Right.
And at the end we will have a discussion to integrate those ideas and concepts.
Yeah, I love that idea. I'm trying to think, like I would like to be able to adapt that to like less ambitious for like undergrads. I just, it's a little tricky because usually like 50-minute class session, it's like, I want to be able, that's exactly the kind of thing I would want to be able to do with a breakout room. But realistically, like even if you had a class of 20 undergrads and you had a little thing that they needed to puzzle through and then present it, like, oh, it's so hard to get in 50 minutes, like, because
that was for undergrads actually, but it
Yeah.
depends on
but you
the
had 3-hour time. Yeah.
Yeah, it depends. I guess the subject should be easier, or the information that you give the students should be more
Small.
concise and small.
Small.
Yeah, right.
Very small.
Right.
I would love to try that more. Yeah. Thank you. Although I'm not
Right.
teaching on Zoom right now, so thank God. But thank you. It's a great idea.
Thanks, guys. You have such good ideas. Okay, I'm gonna go over a little bit of a few slides about best discussion practices, and then if time permits, Laura, how much time do you want to give for the activity, the synchronous activity?
Just, I mean,
or should we? How did you want to do it?
we'll just play it by ear. I
Okay.
think we can do it pretty quickly since it's just us.
Okay.
So
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I'll go over the first slides then, and then I'll point out the instructions for certification task number 6, which is on LaLima right now on Unit 3. It's creating a everyone who came to the synchronous session today would have created a discussion activity, yeah, with lots of details. So I'll just point these out real quick. I'm just gonna leave it in this mode. We had a few. This is a slide deck that Laura created a while back. So it just has a few points on how to make better discussions. You can always have a backstory or a setup before your questions to just make it a little more clear. And the purpose also has to be clearer. And just run through it quickly. You can also invite guests to lead a discussion. Laura, what were you gonna say?
I would just clear my throat, but I was thinking
Okay.
right then that this is linked in the LaLima Unit 3 as
Yeah.
well for reference. Yeah.
It is. Okay. So I'll just point this out. Yeah, if you have multiple guests, it might be nice. It might spice it up a little bit. And you can always use reflection questions at the end of the week. Current events are always important for relevance. And this set of slides, it has more links so that you can check out more information about better discussions. And this is the directions here for the live certification task. So it would have been to, we're gonna just do it in this group here, but we have a separate document where you would edit it in real time. We would see it and you would just come up with a discussion activity that has an overview, and you would, make as much detail as you can about it as if you were gonna create it for your course. So now I'm gonna jump over to here. Let me show you a few examples real quick. So we had this the last time we had the bootcamp was back in April of this year. So these are a few examples so you can see how detailed our participants got. You can see how they put timings here and what kind of resources they would need, and then instructions to make it really clear.
So note this one, the overview, it says addressing the SLO 1 on Indigenous identity. So it is ideal, of course, for any discussion. This is a great reminder of that it should align to an objective that's been planned, and it's not just, tangential or something like that. So
yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm gonna close out of this, and I'm going to get the sharing link for this. I'm gonna share it in the chat ball so that you can open it on your computer.
So we might be able to show like, Paul, if you just start typing something and then we're recording the screen, and then you'll be able to see what you as a professor might be monitoring this document, for example, while everybody's in the breakout room. So, you can see the cursor of whose cursor's there. Can you see it being edited right now live? So you would be able to see on each page is a different breakout group that's in there typing from your instructions. So if you see, like I said, if you see one of the rooms that's just nothing is being typed in, after 10 minutes, or however long you think they should have already gotten going, you should pop in and say, you need any help getting going, or, because you see the other groups that are already starting to flesh, type out their ideas and so on.
And this is a great idea for that situation that you mentioned before, where you have only 15 minutes, because this is very specific and you can follow the actual work of the students.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it could be even more structured, like a little template of, with a table and fill this box in, fill this box in. So do we want to, so Paul, you're alone, sorry. But so you would be, you can type in the breakout room 1, but it's really just you, but you can get your certification right here and now. But we're here with you. So, the idea is to think of a synchronous, you were just saying you had some challenges with the synchronous discussion activity. So do you want to start brainstorming with us? What, do you have a particular topic that you can see that you would like to go along with a live activity? Something you would even give a TA, even if it wasn't for yourself to do.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to push myself a little bit, and not just do things I've already done, or
yeah.
And I'm also trying to think in terms of the class that I need to create, not
right.
a class
Sure.
I've already done.
Sure.
And so it's a little, if you don't mind me just briefly sharing my
sure.
my internal struggle. Is
Sure.
that so? Like I did an online class that was, I mean, I did a lot of online classes at every level over the last 2 years, but the one that was most polished or whatever was that undergrad class with like many students, where I couldn't really do this kind of thing, and it brings up an issue. It's a little bit like related to subject matter and pedagogy, is that art history is a tricky subject to teach sometimes, because there's a certain skill or methodological set of things that people need to master, that they generally don't expect to have to do because they think it's art appreciation and they won't be held to like account. But there's a lot of content. It's like history. It's a lot of, you have to come up with creative ways to convey a lot of content. There's not a lot of problem solving, like in that sense of the word, right?
Right.
So like in my undergrad survey, it's like really I'm just trying to help them like manage like learning a lot of information and how to deal with it and how to strategize that. But now the class I'm doing is more of an upper division undergrad class, where maybe I could venture forth into this kind of thinking in a way that I haven't before. So I'll try, but I'm just making this up on the fly.
Sure. So one of my go-to sort of helper think tank prompts, maybe, if you think of the class and you think to yourself, what would I, like a year or 2 or 5, what would I want them to be able to know, feel, appreciate, be able to do? Like, what is something that you really want them to be able to take away from this class? And that's pretty broad, but then you can probably take a subset of that. So if you just had to think about that from a standpoint of, what do you really, like if you saw them on the street, a year from now after they took the class, and you could say, oh, I remember you were in my class, and they said, oh yeah, now I think of this, or what might you want them to be able to do? That's all I always ask. One something.
Got it. Yeah.
That it could be knowledge, or I guess it could be a skill or even an attitude, right?
Right. Yeah. It's with art history, it's an interesting thing, because you need to get the students beyond thinking like, I like this or it's pretty, and get them to engage with like whatever the task is. Are you trying to cultivate visual analysis, in which case you need to be able to learn how to concisely and in an orderly, logical way parse an artwork or whatever. In the one I'm sort of mulling over right now, I'm thinking like I would assign a reading, 2 readings by scholars who are arguing over the interpretation of Angkor Wat. Having read these 2 papers, I would ask the students to identify the main points of each perspective, which one they find more convincing or compelling, kind of thing. Ultimately then, like what interpretation would they favor and why, I guess is what I'm kind of asking. So I would have expected them in this kind of class, it's an upper division class, so I would have wanted them to have read these papers prior to coming to class. I would have informed them of this. So that would have been here, am I supposed to write all this down? Pre-assigned readings. And I would list, in advance, in fact, on the syllabus from day one, I'm a stickler for like always having a complete syllabus at the beginning of the semester that has everything, like, and so in advance on the syllabus, reading would be assigned, scheduled, and made available via PDF, all from the very first day of classes. I like to give the whole semester, it's just there, like, so they can dip as they need it. And let's say source to provider student in advance. Well, it would be two papers, if we want to get into it, one by George Sedez and another by a Polish scholar named Przylewski. And just to let you all know, I mean, the argument is like, Przylewski thinks that Angkor Wat was a tomb and Sedez thinks it was a temple. So I would, and then so the instructions, I would just you know, based on the two interpretations, or let's see, I would more like summarize the key points of each perspective, the significant evidence used to support each argument, and ultimately make a judgment regarding which view is the more convincing. Like I think I already wrote this, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Does that sound like something that's on the right track?
Yes, yes, that's on the right track. Vanessa or Nicole, if you have any initial thoughts, I'm thinking of a few right now, but
I was thinking of something. I understand this is a very structured critique. I mean, they have to learn what aspects they have to analyze, and they have to make a very standardized and structured analytic document. Is that right? Because if that is the case, before that, they have to have some kind of guideline of how to make this kind of analytic documents. And comparing what other authors have done is great, but if they are upper, I don't know, level students, they may be able to do their own analytic process about the same subject, because in that way they would show that they can do it by their own, not only analyze what others does, but also do something by themselves.
Got it. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of this in terms of not graduate students, because that's not what my class that I'm creating will be targeted to. So and so the last thing I would take your specific advice, Vanessa, I think, and then I would say here at the end, I mean, if I would implement this like in an actual, if this was an actual, like, are we talking about this being a synchronous or an asynchronous thing? If I'm breaking out into like a Zoom room here or whatever, then I would say I have a group of 20. I would see maybe divide them into to 4 or 5 groups, and then I would ask them to report back their assessment, their group assessment of what I've asked them to do, and they would need to report like in 2 minutes each, because I'm thinking time. I'm very time conscious professor, because I teach on Monday, Wednesday, Fridays usually. So I got 50 minutes, you know,
Yeah.
And I don't want to overburden them. I don't want to blow them out, like, you know, and anyway. So yeah, I see your point. Like, higher level analysis is great, but most of my online teaching is quite low level of analysis, to be realistic, like in terms of whether it would be an introductory class or like this will probably, I think this class that I'm creating, Laura knows about it, I'm creating for Center for Southeast Asian Studies. I think it'll be targeted at like the 300 level. I think that's pretty typical. And it'll be kind of the ideas is that like general, not general, well, yeah, I guess general public outreach. It's going to go to outreach. So it could be general public. It could be graduate students from other universities who don't have, Southeast Asian art history is only taught at about 5 schools in the entire US. So like, but they have Southeast Asian centers at like 10 places. So there's like, in other words, there's like other universities that offer Southeast Asian studies but don't have any art history. So it could be graduate students, you're right. But I think it's going to be geared more towards the undergrad who has some background in the area, minimal, but knows how to read and think. I'm not teaching like 100 level skills, but I'm also not necessarily expecting people that can come in and be like, well, neither, and instead I want to advocate my own original perspective, like, because they're not going to have that background to do that well.
You probably would know, you know, your audience, and if you feel that might not. So because I was just looking at the slides for the best practices. It's, do the students have the background knowledge needed to answer this question? So you don't want to go way too far. You don't want to go too low. It's like a Goldilocks situation where you want just right. Now, I mean, I guess one of the things I was thinking about when you said identify the main points or perspectives, I think that's something that I'm thinking, like, one of the good practices of discussion is that there's more than one answer. So on this part, if they're going to identify the main points, wouldn't all, like if you had the group different people, they're all going to kind of find the main points similar, right? So the distinguishing thing that makes the discussion different would be, which one do they find more convincing? But even that is just this or that. So it's a little closed-ended. So you might want to add some things on, like, why did you find it convincing?
Got it.
Why did you find it compelling? And that's where the heart of the, them being able to see, were they able to, explain why? Because that would show that they know how to, read and analyze, these two interpretations. And it's almost like the skill is evaluating the arguments made by each one of those authors, right? So
yeah.
So going back to, can you scroll up a little bit? Yeah. So going back to thinking about, okay, you can scroll back down. The goal that you want them. What is it that, I mean, this is just like this is that technique of just drilling down, why? Like, it's almost like therapy, right? So like, I'm the therapist and I'm just drilling down to get to the heart of your thinking. So when they had, there's these two articles, and they had these two people, probably pretty famous people in this field, are writing about it, and they're going to write about what they think is the original purpose and why in their article, right? So what is it that you want the student to be able to analyze who had the stronger argument, or do you want them to know the history and the of this place themselves to analyze it? I mean, I'm just expand on that.
That's a good question. I'm an art historian, so I'm mainly interested in like an understanding as complete and as nuanced as we can of the history itself. So in some ways, I would consider the individuals and their arguments to be incidental to the exercise, which is to get them to understand what the key issues are in this discussion, why it can be interpreted so variantly, and then what can they feel is the more meaningful or appropriate way to understand the site, ultimately, is what I'm interested in and its history. Mm-hmm. Now, if a secondary kind of aspect of that, speaking to what Vanessa said, maybe for the more advanced student, for them to develop a sense of methodology, of argumentation, of what sorts of points of information are being used by these two scholars to make a particular case, that can serve as a kind of, if they prefer one over the other, that it could serve as a kind of model for their own research or approach, then that would be where I would, if the graduate student presence was there, or a higher level presence was there, to sort of demonstrate a certain methodology. But I don't foreground that in this particular exercise or class. It's more just to get them to grapple with the issues. And I guess if you want to really also, I mean, I see it as several layers. I mean, overall, though, the point is that to understand that interpretations of art and of monuments vary, and there's different ways that the evidence can be used. Not to say that, which often students then do, to say that, well, there's no use in studying it because it's all personal and individual. No, it's that we do have specific interpretations that are based on certain information, and you should develop a sense of to how information is used in order to support a particular argument. But that doesn't mean that there aren't different choices that can be made. There's different views that can be had. I need to get students away from just believing they can say whatever they want about an ancient monument or artwork. I mean, they can, but that's not what they're getting graded for. They can have whatever view they want. Right. And so I want them to understand that, I face this today in my class. I want them to try to understand that, like, these views that we have of the past and of these artworks are shaped by a lot of variables.
Yes.
This can be historical, they can be cultural, but there's still real information that you need to grapple with so that you can say something informed. And so this is an example of how two people are doing that, but they're coming at the question differently and coming up with very different results. And so that's the general kind of, if you want to get into the deep pedagogy of it. But what I really want them to do is just to understand more about Angkor Wat. Like, why do we believe it could be either of these or both?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and in all of what you said, yeah, kind of, I could sense getting to the what I call the heart of the matter for you, you know, and just talking about it, it comes out. And so I'm glad we have this recorded, because you can go back. I think you should listen to yourself and think of a way to incorporate that into some part of this prompt, because you were honing in, and of course it just, you know, I couldn't capture it all in my head fast enough, but it seemed like you were honing in on some things that could be woven in here as well. I don't know if any of you thought the same thing as you were hearing him get deeper into what his goal was, but it's a good exercise, and it's like that, just like I could just play devil's advocate or keep saying, well, why is that to you? If you said one thing and I said, well, okay, why do you want them to know that? Then you might say something else. So if you could play that with yourself and just, well, okay, why do you want them to know that? Well, because blah, blah, blah. Okay, but okay, now why do you want, if you can take that to several levels, sometimes you will get to like a kernel of what you really, really want them to come away with, you know, and it just takes that deep, you know, talking to yourself kind of thing, or doing it with a partner who doesn't know the subject matter, especially like if you do it with another expert in your field, it's not gonna work. It really needs to be someone who is completely, you know, no knowledge, so they can ask these, you know, dumb questions that seem obvious to you, but it's not obvious, you know, and that sometimes being forced to articulate, you know, and even somebody who knew the subject matter could just play the game to try to get, you know, to have an epiphany of like, what is it that you really want them to do? So I heard that coming out in those things. And so if you listen back to this section of the recording, you can probably maybe add some of that in there. What you want to avoid is just everybody coming away with the same, like, yes, here's the points, you know, like you said, that they need to look at the history, they need to look at the religion, whatever the points were that they need to look into. If they all came up with the same thing, that doesn't take advantage of the discussion so much. And just another idea came to me. So a lot of times discussions can be like pre-work for another assignment. So let's say you wanted to have them do what these two authors did, but on a, you know, smaller, simpler level. But because I heard you say that one of the main points is to know that it could be interpreted. It can be interpreted. It could be, so I don't know if there's a historical art thing that you could give them to like do what these two authors did, you know, but not expect to that level of, you know, authorship, right? But approximate it, to go through the concept of like, I'm looking into the history of this place, I'm looking into this, you know, and see, or you could give, and this is getting farther out, but you could give them a fake, here's a, you know, a fake art, you know, thing. You could give them a fake background, fake history, fake, you know, whatever it is, and then they have to like analyze, think, just, you know, and try to write some kind of interpretation of what this thing was. You know, it could be, you know, you could get super creative, but you're having them go through the exercise of, well, what did these scholars do? They looked into the history of the time. They looked into the, you know, all those things. And so if you gave them like a fake thing and see what they come up with. I mean, I'm just making up stuff off the top of my head. But the point is, they would have looked at these and they would discuss them, and then they have to go kind of do a similar thing. All right. I mean, that's like part 2 of this. I'm just, again, making it up without any knowledge. But
yeah, no, thanks. That's good ideas. Sometimes I'm a little bit of a linear thinker too much, in the sense that, like, so I would kind of look at this like, well, what I would want them to do afterwards is probably to summarize their finding in a short essay. But I think maybe that could work, but I think maybe seeking more ways to apply some of this is obviously good and beneficial, but it can be very difficult to do in very content oriented subjects.
Yeah.
Because it's not like it's hard to create scenarios that are meaningful to the students into which they can apply stuff that most of them are finding pretty foreign and alien. And they're like, their response sometimes is like, well, I don't feel qualified to judge this or to talk about this or whatever. And I'm not qualified to apply it into their area because I'm not like a Hawaiian specialist or something, right? So, or whatever, what have you, whatever it may be. It's tricky. And I value your comment. It's a good one. I need to learn more.
Well, anyway, these are just, like I said, just riffing off the top of my head, and obviously creating those kinds of things takes time, more than we can just do live. And I really appreciate you, letting us, watch you think this through, and, on the floor, just, no preparation, you came up with something really good that we could start talking from. And it's a valuable exercise, and I hope, people will watch the video, because it shows what you really have to think about. I mean, if this, this is a chance to then think about some of these strategies, like, is it something that there's more than one answer to? Always check that. Is it something where people can add their own perspectives, or maybe have, so it, you can kind of run through some of these items in your head to see. And then, like anything else, there's no perfect, one perfect discussion activity, right? And each time you do it, or you might realize, oh, I probably should have done that in addition to this, or you'll always think of things like that. So now this is a great first step. I mean, I like the fact that you have them discussing it in their groups, and then come back and share. That's always a good technique, no matter what you do. But any other thoughts or comments? I know, let's see, we're getting close to the end of time here, but really, again, appreciate you being vulnerable here, and just trying something out on short notice for us.
No, thank you. I'm like, I got like my own team of coaches here. Like, this is great. Like, I'm just like, can do whatever I want, and I got 3 people to give me advice on it. That's wow. Thank you. It's wonderful.
No, thank you. I mean, this is enjoyable because you're here. So we're extra glad you're here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thank you for all your feedback. Wow, like, it's nice being the only child here for a day.
For sure, yeah.
But thank you for putting up with all my, musing, like my long-winded thought process.
That's what it takes. That's what it takes. Really what it takes.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, good job, Paul. I wanted to make a couple of comments about your idea. I think depending on your learning objectives, if you were to make like, this is lower level stuff, and then you want to get to a higher level where they are doing their own analysis by, say, the end, closer to the final, then this would be a good discussion in the beginning of the semester. And then one more thing I wanted to bring up was, you were talking a lot about your purpose, what you wanted them to get from it, and that would be something that you could put into a screencast video. And it would, it's a disjointed dialogue, but it's still, students can watch it later on and they can understand better what they're supposed to get from it.
That's really good advice. And it's something that I have to come to terms with a little bit, because I have no problem speaking to crowds of 500. I taught at Penn State. I taught classes of 350 people, but I'm shy to go on video. And so that's why I haven't done my flip assignment yet, because I've done hour-long lectures, videos. Too long, I know they're too long, but only my voice. I like never showed myself. Right?
No, you are a total natural. You're very, engaging, charismatic, and you can see your passion for the subject. I think it would be a wonderful addition. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I just need to reckon with myself.
I know. I went through the same thing. I mean, you have to get through that fire, and then
it's just that like I'm also, you just can't help. I mean, everybody knows this, of course, but you just hone in on every bad thing, like the lighting sucked and I can't.
I know.
And
Yeah,
I
for sure.
misspoke and now I got to redo it. And now I'm like 6 hours later, I redid this video 16 times.
Oh, yeah. So
I know that struggle.
you don't have to do that. I mean, students relate actually better if you're, not up on that ivory whatever tower. I mean, if you're just seem normal, I mean, approachable, not intimidating, they will respond to that in a big way. So
yeah, I know that they do, but I get caught up in the technical aspect a little bit. Like I'm still sort of along with this. I don't know if there's this Canvas class that some people on campus are doing that's online teaching. That's I've kind of started doing that and I kind of grew to kind of dislike it. I felt like it was giving some of this advice, but then it was like, but then the videos and stuff, they were also immaculately shot. And the guy was like, you can just tape your phone to the window, and then he's riding his skateboard and videoing himself and stuff. It's cool, it's interesting, but I can't do that stuff. Like I can't like surf and like I can't, and so I end up with like, look at me here, like half lit in my poorly lit office kind of thing, and it's just like I can't do it.
No, I don't think students expect either too professional or too on a surfboard doing your lecture. I mean just be yourself. I mean that's what will work the best.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I think I do need to invest in one of these ring lights though. Are they available to like borrow anywhere on campus? Like
I don't know, but I want to know more about this Canvas class you're talking about. Who's putting that on?
So I got it all here. It's I mean, I'm being recorded, so I guess I shouldn't.
Oh, I can.
Okay, some final reminders. It's about due dates, but then again, it's not about due dates. It's about what you're doing, experiencing with the resources. That is the main thing. But this unit ends this Friday, September 9th. Then we suggest that you go to the High Five and experience creating your own lesson, because it's the opportunity to try, as you said before, new things that maybe you haven't tried before. And if you already created the Padlet, for instance, you can embed that in your Hive mind. Also, in Unit 3, we have this subject that is very important related to accessibility. When you are working your lesson in the Hive mind, that is something that you have to have in mind all the time. Is my material accessible? My videos are accessible. My PDFs are accessible. Because for instance, when we talk about PDFs, sometimes we scan the documents, and when we upload those documents, they work as images, and they cannot be screen read. So those kind of tiny things, or the colors you use in your Laulima, because depending on the colors, you can help the student differentiate one space from the other, and that could help students who are, for instance, colorblind. So those kind of, and here we have in Unit 3 many strategies and resources related to accessibility, but I think the most important thing is all the time think, is all the material I'm sharing accessible for all kind of students. That is a very important thing. And also we are very close to the ending of this boot camp, and in Unit 4 we have very important things. No more tasks, by the way, because Unit 4 is going to ask just to finish that lesson. And maybe we can discuss those strategies and those, like we did today, things that worked, things that didn't work. Maybe you had trouble with some of those resources there in the lesson template, and we can help out with some ideas. And we have extra information related to the gradebook, for instance, and how the statistics tool work, things that may be helpful to include in in any class, really, in any class. And I think that's it. Thank you very much just to be here.
Yeah. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Nicole. And thank you, Paul.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really appreciate all your all's time just for me. Thank you. It's very
You're
nice.
welcome.